Hello, everyone, and welcome to this next keynote in the Best Virtual Summit. In times of crisis, the need to adapt, develop, and innovate is higher than ever. It is therefore important that associations and corporations look for ways to leverage new and emerging technologies to maintain operations and ensure stability or even positive growth. Our next speaker is Carolina Pinar, the Global Product Director for New Generation Technologies at Nestle. Carolina is in charge of industrializing emerging technologies such as augmented reality, virtual reality, artificial intelligence, or advanced nutrition. In this keynote, Carolina will tackle how Nestle approaches technology innovation and how they have managed to implement changes with agility during the pandemic, as well as how specific challenges brought up by the pandemic were tackled using technology and innovation. Before we start, I would like to remind our viewers that you're all very welcome to post your questions for Carolina in the comments on the stream in YouTube or Facebook. That said, I will give the floor to Carolina to share with us how Nestle is leveraging tech innovation to adapt to the post-pandemic reality. Carolina, the floor is yours.
Hi, thanks for the intro. I'm just gonna share my screen. Can you see it? Yes. Okay. Good. So, like I was saying, thank you for inviting me. This is big title: How Nestle is leveraging tech innovation to adapt to the post-pandemic reality. We are a very large company, and we're doing a lot of things at the same time. So, I'm just going to focus on a couple of things, just to give you a feel for how innovation can help the business, and also what we did behind the scenes months and years before COVID struck to be able to be agile, right? Because this is not like you snap your fingers and become agile. This is a journey. So speaking of journeys, I want to start with my own personal journey. I understand that most of the audience is young graduates or students. I was myself part of BEST once, and I participated in a couple of summer schools. So I've done a journey always in technology, but I've been changing paths. So I started as a researcher in Siemens, paths and countries, by the way. I studied as a research in Siemens in Germany, then became a consultant, which is basically in the late 90s, which is when I started working. That's what it was. Um, and in France, then I relocated back to Barcelona, which is where I'm originally from, to do more research again on a different topic this time, and also become part of the C-level of a kind of a startup slash technology center, to then move on more closer and closer to the business through Telefonica, the wireless carrier, and also did my stint in the startup world um, before joining Nestle, which is the opposite to the startup world. Right? It's a 154-year-old company. So just to give you a feel for what I've done, and I've always been run tech and innovation, so I learned a thing or two. And also, if you're thinking of your own paths, maybe this is one. You don't have to do exactly the same cities, although I recommend all of them. But it's something that you can think of. So let me also introduce Nestle. It's usually a very well-known brand. But so you know, it's not one brand. It's actually more than 2,000. It's a company. It's the number one fast-moving consumer goods. So this FMCG that you see here in the middle of the slide stands for fast-moving consumer goods. Over 300,000 employees. We sell in almost all the countries in the world except a few. So 187 countries. We sell over 1 billion products every day. These days we sell more than that. And we have a little bit more than 420 factories and R&D sites spread in around 80 different countries. So big company, big operation, right? So what happens when a pandemic strikes to a big company? Well, pandemic meant temporary closures to non-essential stores and venues, right? Stores like some of the food stores were open, but other places like our Nespresso boutiques were not, right? And venues, which include hotels, restaurants, where we sell food to as well, right? And also work from home. So people would eat home much more because they were basically homebound. So that has have affected both consumption and production dramatically. And I should add also the travel bans have impacted as well production. So I'll be talking about consumption and production. So the two sides of the same coin for us. So there have been four archetypes of consumption in response to the pandemic, and the source for this is McKinsey. If you Google it, it's a super interesting report that they created. The first two at the top of the slide are people that pantry loaded, right? But there's a difference, right? So there were people that pantry loaded and consumed because before they were having lunch at work, maybe they would dine out a lot, not anymore, right? So that increases consumption, right? Because you consumption of groceries and food, right? Whereas the one on the right with the toilet paper, and we all know what happened to toilet paper, supply, it's pantry load and it's not consumed, sorry, it's pantry load and hold, right? That doesn't really um, increase consumption. It just means that you binge buy and then don't buy for few weeks until you have consumed what you bought, right? The third archetype is people that now at home, people that change their behavior. So that's a shift in consumer behavior because now you're at home, you do things differently. You might turn into more plant-based diet or more or healthier diet or whatever that is, right? And there's also the fourth archetype, which is not now, and that decreases consumption of people that because they were let go or they're concerned about their finance, they're turning into more basic products and less premium and so on. So if you look at the different categories, so you can see that food basics have gone up, while for example makeup, which is also part of the fast-moving goods industry, has gone down. You don't go out that much. Why use makeup, right? But also alcohol has gone up, right? So and you can see that balance in behaviors, right? What happens to the supply, right? So they give you a one-on-one of how supply works. So we have the farm where farmers produce the food. Then that goes to the factory. And the first arrow means there are ships, there are trucks, right? That actually move the produce to the factory for the to create the packaged good, right? That can be coffee, it can be infant milk, it can be frozen goods, and then for the factory you have like two ways. When it makes it to restaurants and hotels, so the kind of to businesses, or you could make to the grocery store for the business to consumer arm. Now, a couple of things about Nestle. Most of our sales are consumers. We do have Nestle Professional, but it's a small, relatively small part of Nestle. It's a lot in money, but if you look in percentage of revenue, it's not, right? And most of our sales are through stores, both brick and mortar and online retailers. We don't sell direct to consumer so much. You would go to a grocery store to buy your Nestle products, right? You wouldn't buy it from Nestle directly, right? So this is how food supply works in a nutshell at Nestle. Now, with all these people pantry loading, and I'm including myself in that category, we had to enhance e-commerce, right? If stores are some of them closed and some of them open but with long lines, more people turn into e-commerce. Actually, e-commerce globally, you can also Google that, has had a spike starting kind of end of beginning of March, mid-March, right? In our case, I'm just gonna give you the example of Nespresso because Nespresso we operate in a lot of countries as well, and boutiques closed, right? Because we only sell coffee and coffee machines there. So they're not considered as grocery stores. So with the boutiques closed, then consumers were struggling to find coffee. Nespresso has a nice direct-to-consumer business. I would say it's close to half and half, boutiques and online. But imagine you lose half of your revenue because people cannot get to the store. How do you do that, right? So people turn into e-commerce and they won't find easy ways. And the people that don't use e-commerce usually is because they are not very tech savvy or they're used to the conversational piece of going to a store. So we do have a chatbot which was operating in the UK market only. It's called an Espresso Assistant. It's on Facebook. And so what we said is like, let's leverage that and create like a light version that we can deploy in all the markets where the boutiques closing is hitting the business. And that chatbot is going to help users buy coffee, get all the updated information, the deliveries, assistance on machines. That's the number one thing that people use the chatbot or the help desk for. Stay at home tips, because we were getting a lot of questions on that as well. And also information on the boutique reopenings. People were asking, when is the boutique going to reopen, right? So have a place to share all that, as well as talk to an agent if needed. Still a lot of people want to talk to a human being, right? Now, This is how the chatbot looks like, right? This is one part of the conversation, right? And we can help them with ordering coffee, delivery, machine. I'm assuming you are familiar with chatbots. You've used them a few times. If not, it's like you're texting, but on WhatsApp or Facebook Messenger or whatever messaging platform you use. But the other side, responding is not a person, but it's an artificial intelligence engine, right? Using something called natural language processing. So this is sort of the chronology of what happened, right? So we had this consumer engagement chatbot that was only available in one market, and e-commerce was not the number one thing that a chatbot did. We got the request mid-March, which is when most stores closed, and in the European region and also in Canada. And then 16th of March, we get the request. 24th of March, which is 8 days later, including its weekend, we had an MVP, a minimal viable proposition ready. So all the design and development took this time, which is very, very fast. And then took a little bit longer to get all the testing. This thing that when you test things out in a company this big, you have a lot of compliance to do. It's not, you cannot push stuff out happily. So that there are some process to make sure that things are robust. And especially we're talking AI, we also had, a code of conduct on how the AI is going to be presented to our consumers and so on, right? And then the market, in this case, it was Russia, the first one that we created the chatbot for, has to sign off. On all the aspects, branding aspects, language aspects, whether the chatbot is responding correctly. So there's a lot of work to do, right? So it might think like March 24th through April 16th is not so long for so much work to do. So April 16th, that was a go live in Russia. And then 1 week later, we had all the translations testing ready and changes to the processes for the next country, which in this case was Spain. And as of today, we also have a couple more markets, and one of them in two different languages, which has also kind of its complexity. So basically, from the business request to the MVP, it only took us 1 week, right? And that is, like I said, this is outstanding in a company this size. I'm going to give you the secret sauce at the end of the other presentation on how we did that. It's kind of 1 week is kind of cheating because we already had a lot of work done, right? But cheating in a good way, right? Now let's go back to the farm, factory, restaurant, grocery store thing, right? What happened here as well? Not only did stores close, but also travel was banned. So we cannot travel. I cannot travel, right? And my colleagues, the 299,099. So that is a problem for factories. Very, very big problem because in factories we have very complex machines that only engineering knows how to fix and maintain. And our factory floor workers, they don't know. So what happens when those engineers do routine maintenance and also fix things when they break, cannot travel, right? How do you do that? It's like having me fix my car. I have no idea. Right? They would just leave it in the garage. So we had to provide assistance, a little bit like telemedicine, where you have like a surgeon, really good one, sitting somewhere, and then there's an operating theater somewhere else, and then somebody else is following instructions, or even a robotic arm. Same thing, right? So we needed to ensure factories keep producing, and that means that the machines need to keep up and running, right? We had a couple of things. The first one was this direct assistance from engineering experts to the factory floor workers, so they would follow instructions on like turn this knob to the right or whatever that is, and they had to work both on a tablet and smart glasses. In some factory settings, you're not allowed just to walk with a tablet for safety reasons, right? You have to use smart glasses. So from the moment we got that request to the first deployments, it took us 2 weeks, right? So that's also very, very fast. The second thing was obviously we had new machines, but machines are being replaced when they get old in a number of factories. And then COVID hit, but we were installing those machines. So all the factory workers need to be trained. Now the trainers could not travel, right? So we had to provide that as well. This is a similar solution technology-wise, but the use case is different and the content is different, right? So here you have example in one of the factories. Again, this has to work on an iPad or a tablet, and also in smart glasses, right? So you can see one example on the consumer side to keep the business running and the revenue flowing, and the other one ensuring that the production and the supply chain of goods keeps flowing, right? So how come could we do this so fast, right? Is the million-dollar question. So because we have an innovation organization, um, which is basically three things. Right? One is we got a continuous finger on the pulse with our innovation outpost in Silicon Valley in Israel. And we're also planning on expanding as well wherever there is a bustling environment for innovation. Second is we're teaming up with tech startups to prototype and test concepts quickly. All of this augmented reality, which is a technology that's used for remote assistance and remote training or natural language processing, most of it comes from smaller organizations, right? Natural language processing now it's much bigger, getting a lot of traction. So Amazon, Google, Microsoft have it, but augmented reality is a little bit different, right? And then we also have selected in-house development. We are not a technology company, although we leverage a lot of technology. And for certain things where there's tight integration with our systems, we do have developments that we do in-house, like the chatbot, which is connected to our CRMs and to a lot of things, right? So these three things combined are like at the core of our innovation organization that make possible that when something is needed, we can be fast because we have been anticipating and working on that. The second thing is we tap into employee ideas. And we have 300,000 people, right? If only 1% has a good idea, that's a lot of good ideas, right? So we have a program called Ingenious that has been used by more than 60,000 of our employees. It's a 6-year-old program over 108 locations and has produced close to 5,000 ideas. And we use that as well during the pandemic. We're still running that program actually to identify things to improve, right? And a lot of ideas have emerged from that. We have now some innovation projects around how to ensure that people keep a balanced diet, both employees and our customers, while at home, because you tend to indulge yourself. That's why alcohol sales have gone up, right? Now, the way this program works is, you propose and get votes on your idea, then an expert panel evaluates it, and if it's a thumbs up, then we have an internal team that helps the idea owner prototype it, and then it's presented to kind of Shark Tank funding board, and if it gets the funding, then the prototype becomes an MVP, and then eventually it's launched, right? So it's a really good way to tap into the collective know-how that we have within the company. And finally, all of this is possible because we have a systematic way of scaling up new technologies and integrating them in the legacy systems that we have, which are many, right? That's actually the team that I lead. So basically, that's two things. First, and both seem like obvious, right? First, you need to decide what to scale and for whom. This thing that seems so obvious when you get to the complexity of a company like Nestle is not that easy anymore, right? And second, you scale it as a product, not a series of projects. A lot of the companies in this industry have done like a lot of one-off projects. You develop something, you put it in the market, and then that's it, right? While technology is not like that. It's a never-ending life cycle. Well, it ends when you kill the product, right? But it not you keep evolving the product and the proposition. So we decide what to scale based on, is it doable? Like for remote assistance, we had tested and we knew there were a few technologies we could leverage for tablets, for smart glasses that would work, and where we could load content rapidly, that we could create the 3D assets and so on, right? It adds value. So obviously there's a business case in all the trips that we saved and all the uptime of the machines that we got for the remote assistant example. And then there has to be a sponsor. If there is no sponsor, then there is no point, right? And it's very tied to value. If there's no value, and the sponsorship piece is important because then there's a lot of tech for tech's sake vanity in the innovation space, and we make sure that we scale only really valuable things, about making sure that there is a sponsor, somebody puts money on the table, right? Now, scaling as a product means three things as well. It means that there is a roadmap, and roadmap matters because it's not so much about what you decide to do, but what you decide not to do and why, right? And focus really on delivering that value. It has metrics. Like, are we doing things the right way? Then we measure and we correct. And finally, it's a mindset thing. It's very different mindset. I don't know how many of you are familiar with tech product or agile or any other frameworks, but the mindset of product is very different than the mindset of projects. And this is kind of the secret sauce that we applied for the pandemic, and we're going to continue to apply it because this is not over, and we're facing probably a 2-year recession that will require a lot of this mindset and adapting very, very flexibly. So that's it on my end, and I'm open for questions now.
All right. Thank you, Carolina, for this very interesting talk. I definitely think that we can all understand that this kind of mindset and this kind of methodology for corporations will be very effective in times like these. So I hope our viewers gain something from this. I'll now check if we have some questions. I have received the first one, and that is you mentioned that you have this new chatbot that was developed extremely fast. How widely spread is this right now? Like, how is it going, basically, the actual deployment?
Well, we have it in 5 markets. We have a few more in the pipeline. Uh, and kind of the speed is really based on the demand, not so much our bandwidth in because we have I think a well-balanced development team is more around the demand and also the capabilities. Because when we implement the chatbot, we make the handover to agents. So really, we have a lot of diversity in terms of how help desks are set up in markets. And in some markets, you would put a chatbot, the chatbot might get stuck, or the customer might want to talk to a person. If that is not a possibility, then perhaps the chatbot is not the best answer, right? And so, yeah, it's we analyze the demand and thought of cost benefit, and then we deploy. But in terms of deploying, it's basically trans creating. That's the right word. That so you translate and readapt to the processes, and that is done very rapidly.
All right, thank you. That definitely is looking well then for the future chatbot as well.
Mhm.
There's another question, and it is you mentioned a lot on the mindset sort that is required, which I presume that is not only from the higher ups, from management, but also from everyone in the company. Everyone sort of needs to be on board with
Yeah.
this concept of moving forward all together. So, how do you encourage innovation and this positive mindset?
So we have a few things. So the Employee Innovation Program in Genius is a core asset because it not only produces good ideas, it also proves that anyone can be an entrepreneur, right? If they put their heart and soul into that, and we help them with the things that they don't know, because creativity and innovation is something you can learn, right? And that is a lesson that, and we share the outcome a lot, and we try to onboard a lot of people. That's why 60,000 out of 300,000 have participated in the program, which is a really good number. That's one. Second one is we shifted, we are shifting from a project based organization to a product based, and providing a lot of upskilling and reskilling for people so they learn the basics of this change, so they're not afraid of what they don't know, and they focus on the mindset change, right? Because when you have to move from A to B, B is very different, very far apart from A. You're afraid you're not going to be able to do it. So if that is removed, then it's just a mindset. I mean, not just mindset changing is very, very complicated. But if you're also afraid that you're not going to be able to drive from A to B, then it leads to blocking. So I would say there's capability building and also show leading by example.
Yeah, that does sound quite great. Actually, you mentioned this concept of product-based mindset and project-based mindset. Can you maybe elaborate a little bit what is exactly the difference between these two things?
Yeah. So a project would be we have a need, we develop the solution, we deploy it, and then we basically maintain it. But the solution never changes, right? However, the need for that solution, the problem might evolve and change, right? And then if that happens, you come up with a different solution, whether you deploy it in, and you end up having lots of like related things, but not quite, right? And that is very difficult actually to maintain. It's piling up cost, but also you don't get any benefits from the fact that they are maybe 70% the same and then 30% variation. If you manage to package everything that's common to these different flavors, then you got a product, and then you can customize the rest. And that is the main thing. And then also what I would say is the metrics. Projects usually have metrics until they are deployed. Then you close the project, and everything else is what we call run, keeping the lights on, which is measured financially, but not yeah, that would be the main metric. If you have metrics around what is the usage, what is the adoption, what is the lifetime value, typical product metrics, and what are the features that are used and what are the features that are not used that you might trim and nobody would cry for losing them, right? Then you optimize your funnel, and that's for me the main difference.
Yeah, thank you for this clarification. I think it's quite valuable to fully understand the difference between those two things, to understand why one can be beneficial over the other one. I also received the question that basically Nestle is present in practically all of the world, and there's between different countries a large difference in access to technology. So how do you adapt solutions that you're providing to these different accesses of technology that specific regions or countries are having?
Yeah, that's a great question, and we have huge differences. um, for example, if you think like we have two initiatives that are very similar in nature or in ambition, that like the end game is kind of the same, but one is in North America and the other one is Central and Western Africa. Now, only thinking telecom infrastructure, right, and the access of people to broadband, completely different games, right? And so we had to say, okay, we want to, or also the banking system. Like people have credit card, bank account in North America. People pay with the mobile, right, or cash in Africa, right? So there are major differences. What we do is we have like a value proposition that what do we want to accomplish, which is the abstract thing, and then we have like tiered approaches when it comes to how are you going to deploy that thing, right? Taking into account also the price point of things, right? Like if you buy like a Nescafe jar in Europe or in North America, you're gonna buy one of those in Africa, right? You go to the store every few days and buy one. This is a very, very different behavior, micro payments, right? Because you don't have all the money to have all that jar, right? So if we adapt it to the different behaviors and the available infrastructure. And for example, something that might be very smartphone based in North America will be based on text messages, for example, in Africa. But the gist of it will be the same, which is that you can automate certain things like a purchase, right? For example. But we have to have like different paths, obviously, and different solutions, different vendors.
Yeah. It sounds like a monumental and interesting challenge to get this all figured out on how to reach the right people in the right way. As we are reaching the end of the time we have for this Q&A, and we shouldn't make the next speaker wait too much, I will close the question and answer round here. I would like to thank you, Carolina, for being here, for providing your views on the questions that were asked, and also providing insights on Nestle's actions and views on innovation and technology. I will remind our viewers that you are always free to reach out in case you still have any questions. All the contact information is available. And I would like also to ask you to stay tuned for the next keynote on how a pandemic is accelerating the transformation of a 120 years old young company, 120 years young company, which will start at 4 p.m. That's it. Thank you again, Carolina, for joining us in this virtual summit, and hope to see you again.
Okay. Yeah, thank you.